Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We are, so close to the beginning of a college football season that, to be fair, is going to be a little bit nutty. Going to be a little bit crazy. The Protect College Sports Act that we thought was going to bail us out from some of this nuclear arms race of increased spending maybe has died on the vine a little bit. Injunctions and temporary restraining orders and all of that, the billable hours winning the day yet again. And it's going to be a sincere relief to be able to just put all that to the side and talk about actual football. It is a game week, week 0, for a lot of teams around the country. One of the more interesting non-conference preseason type games in the Big 12 will take place this weekend. Bright and early, 10 a.m., Aviva Stadium, Dublin, Ireland, North Carolina, TCU. That, again, that's a fascinating game for the sake of the Big 12 conference's standing relative, especially to the ACC, but to the other power leagues. Really, the one that you have to beat and have to establish yourself over is the ACC. If this were TCU versus Iowa and TCU beat Iowa, there's not a person on the planet who's going to say, oh, okay, the Big 12 is better than the Big 10. In fact, the Big 10 could lose every non-conference game and bowl game to the Big 12 this year, and no one is going to come away with the conclusion that the Big 12 is better than the Big 10 just because of the way that we are so stubborn in moving off of established opinion. At the end of the day, though, you can firmly establish yourself as the number 3 league in the country by winning games like this one. TCU obviously has the added intrigue of it being a North Carolina team that is coached by Bill Belichick, at least for now. San Jose State, USC. North Carolina State, Virginia. Jacksonville State, North Dakota State. Sac State, Eastern Michigan. Hawaii versus Stanford. Hawaii coming to the mainland for that one. New Mexico State, Florida State. Memphis, UNLV, your week 0 games. Then, of course, 9 days from today, you've got Idaho at Rice-Eccles Stadium, as Utah will be one of 2 preseason ranked teams playing a Thursday nighter in week 1. That'll be September 3rd. The nighttime slate is really capped off by Utah, and I guess there's some of you out there who might also care about UAB versus Illinois. And then, of course, Friday, you've got games. Saturday, you've got games. Sunday, you've got 3 games. Monday, you've got a game. I like that college football does this. No, I love, actually, that college football does this. Before the NFL kicks off its regular season, college football is just like, let's just jam-pack the weekend. Let's go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we'll even sneak one in on Monday night. That'll be SMU, a ranked SMU team on the road against Florida State. We'll obviously be talking about all of these games up and down. Lee Sterling is going to be joining us throughout the year to talk the betting odds on some of these games. Jeff Schwartz obviously takes special interest in the odds and the wagering and things like that. So we'll get to it with those guys. On today's show, Ari Temkin is going to join us in about half an hour. Alyssa DeRico is the Utah volleyball head coach, going to hop on with us. Zach Moss is going to swing by on the show today. And I think by the time we have a conversation with Zach Moss, we'll be able to talk about some interesting news regarding Zach Moss. I'm eagerly awaiting some junk mail, an official notice about certain things from the Utah football program, but nothing as of yet.
Yeah, Zach typically is going to be, at least the plan for now, typically is going to be at 1 on Mondays during the season. Today he's moving to 12:30, so we'll see if that news that you're teasing, OC, you just got us all on the edge of our seats now.
Eyeball emoji, vague posting.
We'll see if that's out. That official news is out by 12:30 when we talk with Zach, and we can ask some questions about it. I know I have an idea of what you're talking about because we've talked about this, OC. I'll just say Utes fans are going to really love it whenever it is made official.
Something I don't think people are going to love. I don't think people here in Utah are going to love. Maybe, though. Maybe there's some folks out there that are okay with this stuff in the Utah fan base. I think your opinion of it would be heavily swayed by whether or not Utah benefits from it, and there's no indication that Utah is benefiting from this anytime soon. But this is becoming problematic and trendy in college sports where guys who have their cup of coffee, their flirtation with the professional leagues are now returning to college sports. And the 5 years to play 5 eligibility ruling has complicated this thing. And it was a basketball story for the majority of the summer. And now it's becoming a football story and this one is the most specific of examples. Pete Thamel and others reporting that former Ole Miss tight end Daquan Wright, who the Cleveland Browns picked up and then put on waivers, instead of trying to land with another NFL team, he is going to return to college football, and he's going to go to LSU to play for his old coach from Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. As far as we know, this is the first player to have an agreement to return to play college football after signing with an NFL team as an undrafted free agent. He actually signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was cut by the Philadelphia Eagles. He was then claimed off waivers on August 11th, and he does not want to play that waivers game anymore. He has been waived by the Browns. And look, if already twice, I want to be forgiving. I want to be understanding to the player, to the person involved here, right? If you're a guy who was an excellent player in college football, it doesn't mean you're going to be an NFL football player. We know this, right? Some of the all-time great Utah football players, like some of the most impactful guys that this team has had on big-time seasons, and other seasons as well, but in big-time seasons, sometimes those guys that are great, great, great college football players don't end up having lucrative NFL careers. Oftentimes it's you lack certain measurables. Sometimes you're just, the victim of bad timing. I mean, there are Heisman Trophy winners from the past who have not had NFL careers. Remember when Jason White at Oklahoma won the Heisman Trophy?
I'll bet you a lot of our audience doesn't remember that because the story that year was, I believe, an undefeated Oklahoma team before the national championship, undefeated or one loss. The story that year was like this star freshman who's eating up yards in the back out of the backfield, and Adrian Peterson, but Jason White had incredible numbers and was on maybe an undefeated Oklahoma team that looked like they were going to win the national championship. So, yeah, I bet a lot of people don't remember that. That's an obscure Heisman Trophy winner because he did nothing notable after college. My guy, Troy Smith from Ohio State, is another guy. He had one of the most electric years I had seen up to that point as a quarterback, especially at Ohio State, which has not exactly been quarterback U until, I guess, sort of recently. He did nothing in the NFL. He was, I think, a fifth-round draft pick and was like a third-string quarterback for most of his career. So those guys happen every once in a while.
Jason White got put on a Tennessee Titans practice squad, got signed as like a rookie tryout for the Tennessee Titans, and then cut and never given another opportunity as a former Heisman Trophy winner. Right? So I understand why Daquan Wright and all these other guys, because there's, a couple dozen of them now, are looking at it and they're saying like, oh, man, I'm not going to stick in the NFL, or I already tried. I had my moment in the NFL and it didn't work. I would really love to go back and play another year of college football. And you're looking at a situation now where the guys that are entering college football today, they have 5 years. You entered at a time where you have 4. And they're saying, wait, I should get 5. This kid who's 18 years old right now is going to get 5. I'm 22 years old. I just finished. I was on campus 3 months ago. Give me a 5th year. Like, I understand why they feel this way. The line that continues to get blurred, and we continue to hope someone will draw again and again and again and not blur it over and over, the line has to be drawn somewhere. I think that being in an NFL uniform or an NBA uniform and then trying to come back and play college sports, I think it's absurd. I think it sucks. I think it's ridiculous. I think it takes opportunities away from guys that are already on teams, guys that are trying to walk onto teams, guys that are scholarship players on teams. I think that at some point we have to say, you know what? You've exhausted your eligibility under the rule set that you agreed to. You don't get to do this. But lawyers don't feel that way. Billable hours are undefeated, as I've talked about. And if you're Daquan Wright, you're probably like, yeah, dude, my coach went from Ole Miss to LSU, and he's calling me, and he's saying, I want you to come play for me. And I'm going to go make more money this year at LSU than I would have made in the NFL because I've already been given 2 pieces of evidence on my NFL road that I am not the player I thought I was, they hoped I was, whatever. So I am that dude in college football. I'm not that guy in the NFL. The barrier to entry in the NFL is a lot higher, as we're fully aware. We have seen great Utah football players, great BYU football players, great national level blue blood program football players, like we just mentioned with the Heisman Trophy winners, that they can't get over the NFL hump. If that NFL hump is standing in your way and you can either try to run up it and climb over it and scrabble for some type of like momentum or a practice squad spot, or you can look back and there's a booster or a coach or a program standing there with $300,000, $500,000, $700,000. You're just like, yeah, that's a lot easier. I'll also be on the field. I'll also be putting up stats because I've been there before. I know what it looks like. I know how to do it at the college level. Oh, and guess what it also does? It increases the likelihood that the next time I take a swing on the NFL, they're going to be like, oh, you know what? He actually improved a little bit last year. He's got another year of seasoning. Oh, look at another year of production. So for the players in this situation, and thankfully it's not hundreds and hundreds of them, but for the players in this situation, it actually makes an incredible amount of sense that you would capitalize on this. We just had somebody in studio I was talking to, and I brought up my guy, Steve Savoy. I hope you're out there listening, Voy. I love you, dog. Steve Savoy left the University of Utah too early to try to pursue his NFL dream. And it made sense for him at the time, right? School wasn't necessarily his thing. He'd been an unbelievable college football player. He could change the lives of himself and the people around him by making it in the NFL. It made perfect sense for somebody like that to take an early jump while you still had eligibility. This is before the 5-year thing. Where you still had another year of eligibility. I'm going to take a run at it. Back then, and every year before this year, if you made that decision and it didn't work out, that was the end of it. It didn't work out. As unfortunate as that is, it didn't work out. If Steve Savoy had the option at that time of going and getting cut and waived by a couple of NFL teams and then bouncing back and playing at the University of Utah, or at that point, the transfer portal, right? If we're applying this new rule set to that old team, right? All of Utah's great players from the Fiesta Bowl team probably would have been in the transfer portal.
How many of them that were not seniors, right? How many of them would have followed Urban to Florida?
I mean, so many. Urban would have taken as it stood, only 2 people followed him from the University of Utah to Florida.
And that was the old transfer rule where you had to sit out a year,
Yes.
right? Unless you were a grad.
One of them was on the Utah team. He was the backup long snapper, right?
Okay.
And he was on the Utah football team. Butchie, shout out to you, because his parents they were like friends with the Myers or something like that.
Okay.
And he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go to Florida," and he ended up winning a national championship with that team. So he's got a ring somewhere. Good for you, Butch. Ryan Smith was the other guy, not Utah Jazz owner Ryan Smith.
Wait, Ryan Smith was a Ute football player?
Freshman corner who was like a freak athlete. Speed-wise, it was him and Weddle we did speed school in the offseason, that, post Fiesta Bowl, getting ready for Kyle Whittingham's first year, the offseason conditioning program. They did something in the early mornings called speed school, and it was just you racing back pedals, you racing full 10-yard sprint, 20-yard sprint, 40-yard sprint, you doing a race against other guys in your position group in like the short shuttle and things like that. And it was a battle to be the fastest guy on the team. And it was Ryan Smith or Eric Weddle, right? Those were the 2 guys that were going at it all the time. And Ryan Smith was fast enough that everyone was like, this guy, like Weddle obviously was so fast, he ended up playing a trillion years in the NFL, maybe a Hall of Fame career. Ryan Smith was somehow, even though he was like 165 pounds and had gigantic feet, I think he had size 14 feet or something weird.
Wow.
Which would make you think that guy should be slow.
Under 6 feet.
I think he was about 6 feet.
About
maybe.
6 feet? Yeah, those are big feet.
He was freakishly fast, right? And he followed Urban to Florida.
I'm taller than that and have smaller feet.
Yeah,
so
that is weird foot size.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know why I remember that about him, but he was so fast and he was a great player, and he followed Urban to Florida, and he played on those Florida teams, and he won a national championship also. But he was willing to sit out the year under at that time, the current transfer rules, right? If these rules existed where Utah football players, college football players from every generation previous could have taken another crack at it after failing in the NFL or after not quite sticking in the NFL, it would have changed everything for those individuals. Like Joe Kruger. Remember Paul Kruger's brother, Joe Kruger? He went to the NFL too early. Joe Kruger made the jump to the NFL, and it made sense. Big brother had been in the NFL. Big brother had killed it in the NFL. So, yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm even bigger than Paul is. He's like 6'7". He jumped to the NFL too early. What would it look like? How much would it change things for a guy like that if he had gone to the NFL, realized, you know what, this is not the right time, this is not the right year for this, and bounced back to college football and either gone into the transfer portal or just put himself right back down on a Utah football roster? It changes everything. For the player, it makes an abundance of sense. And this is the overall conflict that exists right now. Because it makes sense for the player, the lawyers say, well, if it makes sense for the individual player, then by law we have to make it make sense for the institution, for the team, for the organization. Those organizations, those teams, those institutions should allow whatever makes sense for the player. And this makes abundant sense for the player. So now we're going to make it make sense for you, LSU, for you, college football, for you, whatever. And it just doesn't. That's the unfortunate reality here.
I have a thought about this, OC, as to a way to, if and when the Safe College Sports Act or whatever else that finally draws these solid lines and we can finally have some structure to these things in college football and college athletics. You alluded to Jackson Kohler playing NBA Summer League with the Utah Jazz, and now he's signed with BYU to play basketball this season. I personally am not as against guys who played Summer League and that's all they played, being able, if they have eligibility left, being able to bounce back. This situation with LSU, this guy went all the way through training camp. He went He was part of preseason rosters. Like, preseason is not summer league. Like, training camp is or OTAs are probably the equivalent to summer league in NFL offseason, would you say, right? I wonder if that should be like, okay, you get a camp invite and you get cut in camp. Okay, fine. You can retain whatever eligibility you have due to the rule set, or someone got an injunction somewhere, which is what's happening with this 5 for 5 for 2020 for class of 2022. Fine. You are on a preseason roster and then you get cut. Sorry, like, you're an NFL player at that point. I feel like that's just, the NFL doesn't have that clear, like, Exhibit 10 contract that only summer league guys sign in the NBA. I wonder if that's something that ought to be adopted when we're talking about this, if and when permanent rules ever get set and are ever enforceable. I don't know.
And I guess when I say, right, I have a bad tendency if I point out problems, but I don't have viable solutions when I point out those problems. And so when I say lines need to be drawn and they need to be enforceable and they need to be enforced, I probably should tell you where I need that line to be drawn. And I think that's what you're doing here is you're saying, okay, OTAs are acceptable, but training camp is not.
Well, or even training camp, it's like once we get to you're on a preseason roster, whatever, or whatever the most people agree to is the line, but it just, there's certain things that are just camp, right? That's just practice. You're not really in the NFL. You're just practicing with the team, right? And technically you are, but when it comes to, if we're going to, I think that the logic of that a lot of people do have a problem with, and I'm fine with it, with the, hey, you played summer league in the NBA. Like, okay, you didn't really play in the NBA. I wonder what that is for the NFL.
Do summer league guys sign NBA contracts?
They sign what's called an Exhibit 10 contract, yes, which is like 10-day in the summer.
So you make an agreement to be a professional.
Yeah.
And maybe this is where the line is so muddy because, like, once you become a professional, you don't get to be an amateur anymore. But college athletes are not amateurs anyway these days.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where we just need to get over this and say, all right, the bounce back thing is going to happen now in both leagues. And by the way, it'll, I guess, happen somehow in Major League Baseball at some point, and it'll happen in hockey, I guess, at some point.
I think that would be like you sign a minor league deal, and then you spend a few months in the minors, and you're like, oh, I am gonna be here a while.
Yeah,
and then you go, I could go back to school, right? I still got a year of eligibility.
Which, by the way, that used to be a really, really difficult decision for baseball players. Because if you decided you wanted to play college baseball, you were committing to play for 3 years, basically.
Yeah, it was the NFL rule, right? Where you have to stay 3 years in college if you're playing.
And then you were watching your own peers, guys that you played on these travel teams with, these all-star teams with, and those guys were taking the minor league route. And some of them are probably still in the minor leagues 15 years later, and some of them did their 500 at-bats in the minors and then got called up, and you're just like, oh, crap. I'm sitting here at Tennessee, and that guy's playing for the Boston Red Sox. Did I make the right decision here, right? So baseball players have had to go through this. The problem is, right, we are erasing, and maybe it's not a problem. I'm calling it a problem. Maybe it's not a problem. The issue, I'll say, is that we are erasing the distinctions between good choices and bad choices by letting everybody take a mulligan on everything. We are completely eliminating the trial and error process because you're not punished at all for the error. And I just gave you a couple of examples of guys that, like, I wish that they weren't punished for their error. Steve Savoy, I wish that the error hadn't hurt his ability to make a living playing football because he was good enough to do so. He just went too early. I think the same might be true of Joe Kruger, right? And your path, right? All of us make these mistakes on our path. Like, maybe I shouldn't have transferred. Maybe I should have stayed here. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Now all these guys transfer every single year. We're the message that we are sending, and this is where people are just like, okay, enough. The message that we are sending is that you can just, if you make the mistake, you can just do it over again. You can have a do-over. Oh, you committed to the wrong school. No worries. In 9 months, you can transfer to a different school. And that's probably good on one level, but it's also probably a negative on another level. Just like it is in the real world with job changes. Just like it is in the real world with relationship changes. Just like it is in the real world where you buy a house and crap, I should have bought that other house. Turns out that other neighborhood would have been better for my lifestyle or whatever. And in college sports, like, you can't hit the reset button quite so easily everywhere else. You can't get the mulligan quite so easily everywhere else. And we are just like offering unlimited mulligans to these people now, to the point where it's like, it was already hard enough for the traditionalist to swallow, yeah, this kid can transfer. He can go to Notre Dame out of high school, and then it doesn't work at Notre Dame for whatever reason. He can go to USC instead. And then if he doesn't like USC, I guess he can go play for UCLA across town. Oh, and it didn't work at UCLA. Well, I guess fine. He's going to go play at Arizona State, right? That's hard enough for people to get on board with and to like. And now we're adding this, right? This guy's, he's going to play in the NFL. Just kidding. He's not. He's coming back. And I get this is a unique situation because somebody waved a magic wand and granted an extra year of eligibility to people who never thought they could have an extra year of eligibility. And they're just like, wait, if I hire the right lawyer and we go to the right judge, I can come back to LSU, or I can come back to Ole Miss, or I can come back to University of Utah, and I can score 10 more touchdowns in college football, and I can make, 100 to 1.5, whatever position I'm playing. Like, yeah, let me do that. Right now, Daquan Wright is the guy who we know where he's going to end up, right? There are several other players who are currently in training camps in the NFL, but they're also in the transfer portal on a just-in-case basis. Xavier Harris, another former Lane Kiffin guy. Started 25 games at Ole Miss. He was waived by the New Orleans Saints on August 8th. He is in the transfer portal. SMU running back. Played in the Seattle Seahawks preseason opener. Was cut. 2,445 yards, 24 touchdowns over 4 seasons at SMU. He's now trying to go to UCLA. Anthony Hankerson from Oregon State. Wyatt Williams Jr. from the Arizona Cardinals. He played at Ole Miss. Jack Pyburn at LSU had 3 tackles in a preseason game. He's now trying to go back and play college football. And by the way, to use him as an example, sorry to single you out, Jack, he already played at 3 colleges. So at some point, the endless mulligans are going to run out, maybe. But it does not appear that the NCAA has the enforceable authority to stop this from happening right now.
And I'm going to whisper a couple of things. We're 5 days away from the start of college football season with week 0.
And
we're 10 days away from when Utah starts, and 12 days from when the rest of the country starts, right?
Yeah. Okay. So
also, let me whisper this too. Don't they have to register for school?
they don't. Yeah,
They do, like that's the thing that we don't care about. They've talked to it. Marvin brought it up tongue in cheek, just like I did on the Dan Patrick show. He's like, "This kid registered for school yet?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, this is college athletics." But that's the thing we decided a long time ago we don't care about.
The class is by far the least most important thing. Least most important? Why did I say that? The least important thing in college athletics. We don't care about anyone's class load. We don't. Right? Don't pretend you do. Don't pretend you care about them getting your degree. You probably are like, oh, cool. Look, you graduated. That's fun. Good to see. If they don't, you don't actually care. Don't pretend that you do. However, you might care if they have graduated, not in the literal academic viewpoint, but they've graduated on from college sports into the NFL, and now they're just like, no, just kidding, I'm going to come back. The NBA, by the way, they did this in college sports years ago with a 4-year eligibility clock in the NBA where guys could go explore the draft process. They could go explore. They could dip their toes in the water, and if it wasn't going to work out, they could come back.
Yeah, it used to be if you hired an agent, you are a professional. You are no longer NCAA eligible, and then they softened that by saying, okay, you can hire an agent, do some draft workouts, see what happens, come back. Yeah.
And that was always the right thing to do for NFL football players or potential NFL football players too. Like, let people dip their toes in the water, figure it out. Can this work out for me? The timing is complicated for football coaches in that front because all of that toe dipping in the water is while you're supposed to be preparing at your college as well. But if you're good enough to be a pro player, you could probably compensate for missed practice time at the college level. It's just a mess. And it's getting messier, and that is the problem. We want more clarity. We want more enforcement. We want more consistency, and we're going the opposite way. We're sliding in further and further into the chaos, and at the end of the day, you as a Utah football season ticket holder, you as a Utah football fan, you as a member of the Rock down at BYU, you're being asked to just keep swallowing these things and accepting that these changes are good for you and good for college football, and they might not be. And at some point, people are going to start making a discernment about whether they want to continue to be fans of this sport. You're not going to lose me because it gives me more to talk about on the show. Even if it's stuff that bothers me or annoys me, it's content. All right? I'm going to be a college sports fan until I can't do this anymore. But if I'm the guy who's paying $4,500 for my family to have season tickets, and now I got to go play an LSU team that has 4 former NFL players on it, I might lose a little bit of luster here. We're just getting started on a Monday. Ari Temkin is going to join us next. Don't go anywhere. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in our good friend Ari Temkin to talk all things college football, Big 12, little NFL sprinkled in. Ari, welcome again. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. So I think I'm starting to figure out the best way for college coaches to maximize their roster. You got to have someone on the staff like a GA or something who's always got one eye on the transfer portal and the potential transfer portal. And now you have to add somebody who's watching NFL preseason games and figuring out who's going to get cut. And then you can be the first one to grab that guy out of the NFL and put him on your college football roster because why not make it even more chaotic? What are your thoughts on this wave that I hope doesn't become a tsunami of preseason NFL guys coming back and saying, no, I want my fifth year of eligibility. I'm playing another season of college football.
I mean, it seems very black and white, cut and dried, right? Like there's no confusion and ambiguity over any of this, right? It's just totally obvious and easy, and I'm sure it's really easy for people to figure out. I mean, it's unbelievable. We've got the Colorado ruling, which over the weekend was sort of invalidated. So anybody that just, blanket 2022 class is no longer eligible. I sort of positioned it on my show like this, and that is, let's say that they're handing out chocolate milk in your classroom, but then they decided you've already had enough chocolate milk. But then there are certain people within that class that went to a different classroom to get chocolate milk. But the people that remained in the same classroom are no longer getting the chocolate milk because they already had enough chocolate milk. It's probably the best metaphor I could possibly come up with because I feel like explaining it to a 6-year-old is pretty much the best explanation that I would need.
It's absolutely crazy that we've reached this point in the idiocracy of sports where NBA players, guys who played basketball in an NBA uniform, whether it was in summer league or not, are now back on college basketball rosters. And the same appears to be happening in college football, where you could have been in a preseason game or at least in a preseason camp. You could have put on that Cleveland Browns helmet or that Philadelphia Eagles helmet, and now you're going to go back and be at LSU or at Texas Tech or whatever. I never thought we'd get here, Ari.
I mean, truly, and look, I think in some ways it's interesting the way that the sort of talent pool has gotten deeper, and it really comes down to money and resources, right? Like the industries that have the most money tied to it will be mostly competitive because people want access to that money, and so we're seeing that within basketball, right? Like where before guys would leave college to go play in any part where they could to get paid to play in basketball, whether it was in the G League or internationally, they would just take the first, plane they could and do that. And, now because college is competitive in terms of what they're paying in the international game against G League teams, suddenly the arithmetic is a lot different. And, it's funny because I've been talking to some of my friends that are former, college athletes or professional players, and it's like so many of them are like, I just can't believe the ego would kind of allow you to do that. You feel like you get to the NFL, like that was the dream. And even though, you're still fighting for survival, you just want to keep fighting for that as opposed to going backwards one step. And so it is, in some ways, it shows how much I think just the dynamic, like the internal competitiveness of some of these players have changed.
Everybody I know, all of my buddies from the old days, we've all had a dream at some point, like a literal sleeping dream, where you dream that you're back in your high school football uniform and you have like a weird in the dream guilt trip about the fact that you're not supposed to be there, that you graduated already and you're not supposed to be playing. And of course, it's just a dream. But then you wake up and there's a certain amount of like shame involved where you laugh at yourself, just like, oh, I guess I really peaked in high school and I want to go back there on some subconscious level. And now we're watching it happen in college football.
Well, and I mean, I also I can't imagine what the team dynamics. So let's just play this out here because this impacts the NFL in a big way. where you've got guys that are kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But like, think about practice squads, whereas this is the time of year where guys, if they weren't going to make the roster, they were positioning themselves for a practice squad spot. And, the reality is a lot of undrafted free agents are going to end up on practice squads, and what you do with that is just based on how much work you put in and what the organization thinks about you. But over time, like, you could find yourself on an active roster. It happens for a lot of guys, but it starts with the practice squad. And, what you can make there is, low six figures for a practice squad spot, depending on how long you've been in the league, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. Now, if these guys go back to college, most of them are going to be at the top level of the salary base. So, it's an easy math problem. They're going to make more money going back to college than they would in the practice squad. So what does the NFL do to react in reaction to it? Because they want their feeder system with the practice squad to be intact, and they don't want to lose a ton of the talent pool that they have there. And then, how do they disincentivize that from losing players? And then on the other side, the train has left the station for these rosters. How are they positioning themselves as players to get back on these rosters? And again, it's important to point out that, like, the blanket 2022 class, that has been stayed by the appeals court. So, no longer is every 2022 athlete now eligible. But if you got eligibility from a different state, and there's, Texas and Kentucky and Louisiana and many other states involved here, like Thomas Castellanos, who's, who looks to be going to Texas Tech now, he's part of the Kentucky ruling. So, he's still eligible based upon a court, whereas, everybody else that just has that blanket 2022 clearance is not eligible. So it is, again, extraordinarily confusing.
It's very strange, and yet here we are. Okay, I'm very excited. It's week 0 now, so we can actually talk about at least one Big 12 matchup. We can talk about one game involving a Big 12 team that is going to get, I think, a little bit of a national attention. North Carolina, TCU, Aviva Stadium in Dublin. Give me your keys in this one. And how important is this when we talk about the Big 12? We always talk about you got to establish yourself in bowl games in the non-conference. You got to set your level relative to the other Power Four. Feels like there's a big opportunity for TCU here to do just that.
Yeah, and in some ways, it's kind of a lose-lose from the standpoint of, the expectation to win this game is very high, and so to your point, like, a loss here is almost like 2 losses because of what it means for the conference, because TCU is expected to be towards the top of the conference. North Carolina should be better, but they're still going to be a bottom of the ACC type team. Bill Belichick, I think, learned from some of the mistakes he made in the portal last year and made a much larger commitment to the high school ranks. So they've got some playmakers. They flipped a guy from A&M who's a pass rusher. They got another guy from Ohio State on the defensive line. They ended up with double-digit 4-star recruits. They've got one of the, I think it was top 15 classes in the country in terms of high school recruiting. And conversely, they had like the 64th ranked transfer portal class. So the majority of their talent is, incoming freshmen. So this team will be considerably better from a talent perspective, but might not win many more games than they did last year because their schedule is way tougher this year than it was last year. And look, there's also no shortage of drama when it comes to North Carolina too. And this has nothing to do with Bill Belichick's girlfriend. There's Michael Lombardi, the drama with him, the GM, who's on indefinite leave based on some improprieties, and he's the highest paid GM in college football. And then the bigger one, I think, is that Steve Belichick, Bill's son, the defensive coordinator, was put on medical leave in early August, and the indication seems to be that he's not going to be traveling with the team to Dublin. So it looks like Bill Belichick, who has not called a defense at the college level, will be calling defensive plays. Which is not a far cry from what he's done throughout his career, and he's been very good at it and very successful at it. But that part will be interesting. I think this could be a low-scoring game. I think both teams' defenses stand out. And again, TCU sort of built itself, reimagined itself to be more of a ground-and-pound offense. And so I think that's what we'll see. Probably a new team learning this new offense, playing a little bit slower against a defense that has some talent. And I really think very highly of this TCU defense. It's going to be one of the best in the Big 12.
TCU with some of its own drama in the locker room after they dismissed Jacob Fields, who was a projected starter on this team, for an assault that happened in the locker room. I'm trying to read between the lines and reading all the publication on this one because, look, you can get away with a lot of tomfoolery in the locker room, and you can get away with a fight with your teammate to a certain extent, especially if you're a good player like Fields is. There's something that it feels to me like there's something we haven't been told about the situation, even as all the reporting has efforted giving us the full truth on it. But I wanted your thoughts on, well, two-part. How big a loss is Jacob Fields on the field? And, of course, how big of an issue is this for a TCU locker room that is now, a few days away from playing a game?
No, I mean, you're 100% right. And this was an aggravated assault charge. So it wasn't just assault. It was, either assault with a weapon or assault in an extreme manner. And I haven't heard any reporting in terms of the specifics, but, a locker room fight that's ended with a kid in the hospital. So you've got to do something if you're Sonny Dykes in the TCU program. And obviously they did. I mean, it's a huge void. They brought in Fields, who was the co-defensive player of the year in the Conference USA last year, to really take that Bud Clark spot after losing Clark. They're really good. They're arguably their best player on defense is Jamel Johnson, but now they've got to figure out who's going to play opposite him. And he was supposed to be that guy, but yeah, I mean, you get a guy that basically knocks out another guy in the locker room and sends him to the hospital. That's going to cause some friction and drama within the locker room. So, it is a bizarre situation. And yeah, like you said, I mean, this game is no shortage of internal drama and strife. So we'll see, because that is going to be the one area of concern for this football team on defense. Like, their front seven is pretty stout. I think their defensive line is one of the best in the Big 12. Jamel Johnson is one of the best, safeties in the Big 12. So, they're ready to go, but that was a big spot where they were expecting Fields to be a major contributor, and this is what he does during fall camp. So the fallout is, who'd he hit, and is that player now going to be out for an extended period of time, and how much depth will be tested there, and, now what do they do at safety?
There's the other wrinkle to this where, according to sources, #sources, Fields had, kind of asked for coaches to intervene with this whole tension between him and the Izukanma kid, the receiver that ended up being the victim of the assault, or the alleged victim of the assault. And those same sources were saying that Sonny Dykes never really was given a full understanding of how severe the tension between the teammates was, but head coaches typically don't have to intervene on that level. Usually this is a GA/position coach thing that is like, hey, knock it off, do your talking on the field, and then your teammates in the locker room, whatever. But there was that wrinkle to it as well, that there's maybe some negligence on at least one member of the staff here. If Fields did indeed tell a coach, like, hey, man, this is going to escalate if you don't get him to shut up, or you don't get him off me, or whatever else, the coach's job, we're not talking about, Ari, I'm preaching to the choir here, I realize that, but we're not talking about something in spring ball. We're talking about right. When this happened, they had a game in 10 days. So, maybe Sonny Dykes has to address that with the coaching staff too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great point. And, I also wonder, it's one of those things where if you're a coach, did you see certain warning signs, but did you not realize that those were warning signs? Is this one of the negative drawbacks of a really expedited portal? Remember, there was only one portal this year. So instead of, two to sort of go through spring and then make some decisions, where maybe this kid goes through spring and starts to have some disagreement with some of these other guys, could he have entered the portal and left? This could be the result of just the one portal deal where you had to furiously fill out your roster, and you're not really able to take into account what the chemistry could be within that. So, I think it's a great point on your part too. Also, guys are getting after each other this time of year. They're sick and tired of hitting each other, so they want to hit somebody else. And, how seriously do you take these sorts of things? Because I'm sure in the past you may have, as a coach, heard this, but did you not, did that not escalate to this point? I would imagine Sonny Dykes is doing some sort of post-mortem here, because if not, then he's not doing his job. His job is to evaluate what went wrong here and how this got to such a bad point, and the chain of command, what lagged, because
serious or unserious of a threat, this leads to a whole bunch of drama that you don't need right before your season starts. And the situation that, is pretty unique, within your set of circumstances here. I mean, there's obviously drama and there's fighting and stuff, but to like knock a guy out cold and send him to the hospital.
And allegedly kick him in the head after he was knocked out cold, according to another source that was.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy. That's where the aggravated in the assault comes from.
Yeah, right. Like you're trying to do more damage than just shut this guy up. Like this guy has bothered you to the point where you are trying to kill him. Because I don't know how else to take those acts that happened. And so, yeah, I mean, again, like football, it's intense. There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of talk in this time of year. There's a lot of new guys you're bringing in. You're trying to infuse competition while, making sure that everything stays above board. So I'm sure there's an element of like, I didn't realize it was going to go this far, but you've got to do a postmortem if you're Sonny Dykes. It's a complete breakdown within your program, regardless of how culpable they are or aren't. I mean, this happens, and maybe there were no warning signs. You're still culpable as a coach for this being a part of your program.
We are, 9 days away from Utah kicking off their season. The camp is done. It's now game prep and game install and things like that all around the Big 12 Conference. And here in Salt Lake, we've talked about position battles that intrigue us. If I open it up to the whole conference, is there a position battle that you were paying close attention to for any of the Big 12 teams this year? Because that should be resolved.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've got quarterback battles in two spots. It looks like Cutter Boley will be the starter in Arizona State, but we're not entirely certain of that. And for a team that, should at least factor in the top half of the league, that's pretty significant. Kansas too, but I'm not sure that, they're going to factor into the top half of the league. There's battles for left tackle in some spots. Obviously Utah's got battles along their offensive line they're trying to figure out. So, safety, Texas Tech has a battle opposite Brendan Jordan as their other safety on defense. We just talked about TCU, Jamel Johnson, and who the other safety will be there with Jacob Fields out. So, I think there are some decent battles that rage on here. And, I think with quarterback, that'll be a really interesting one, especially with, last few seasons, there's been guys that were named starters that didn't make it through a few games. There's injuries that will happen. We start with 16 quarterbacks. I'm sure we'll end up seeing, maybe twice as many of that, across the board. I mean, USCF played 5 quarterbacks, had to start 5 different quarterbacks last year. So that'll always be an interesting one to me too. As you sort of survey the Big 12, it's also really interesting too, OC, to see, I took a look at 7 different bowl projections across like CBS, ESPN, College Football News, Athlon, On3, and just to see the sort of variance of the belief of the Big 12. All 7 that I looked at, 0 of 7 had the Big 12 with a top 4 seed, but 4 of 7 had the Big 12 with 2 playoff teams. In fact, Pete Futak had Utah finishing number 12, but finishing outside the playoff because of that automatic bid for the group of 6. And then there was one writer that had Utah not even playing in a bowl game. So it's interesting to see sort of the discrepancies that some of these writers will have in terms of bowl projections. The one other than Utah that was really interesting in terms of the variance that some of the writers had was that the 2 teams that went 0 for 7 in bowl projections, the only 2 teams that were not in any of those 7 bowl projections were both Iowa State and Colorado.
You're doing some some stuff with the Cowboys, Star Time at the Haymaker Network, and so little viral moment from a preseason where Shiaz Pete got to play for the Cowboys, the first Navajo NFL player, as far as we know, and the reaction he got, the support that he got, the post-game speech, all of it kind of heartwarming, if nothing else. And there's questions about whether or not this guy's going to be on the practice squad, whether he's going to be an active roster type player. He's a really inspiring story going all the way back to, being raised on a reservation and finding his way into football. But I wanted, to give you an opportunity to add more context to it and talk more about it, because it was one of the big things that came off social media from a preseason weekend.
Yeah, and the presence of the Navajo tribe at the stadium, showing him their appreciation. It really was a remarkable situation. Everything you just outlined there, I would encourage people that have not seen this to go find it on social media. The video of the standing ovation that he got, the video of him talking in the locker room, all of it. And look, some of it you could oh, it's corny or whatever, but like just the essence of football and like what football has meant to this person and how much that person brings to the forefront in terms of just helping people understand what's happening and being a visibility for the Navajo, right? Like that stuff is so cool. And I mean, there's just nothing like it. I love it. It really is one of the most unique and amazing things about sports that, suddenly you can see these stories that, transcend the sport itself. I'm pretty confident he's going to be a practice squad player for the Cowboys this year. Like they've had this over the years where they bring in projects along the offensive line. I certainly think that that's going to be the case for him. I don't see him being a hot commodity in terms of, not being able to pass through waivers once he doesn't make the roster. But here's a guy I think over the next couple of years to watch and track to see his growth and see if he can become an NFL player. Because, it's funny. I think most of the guys that will start in the Big 12 as part of the two deep, they all think they're going to play in the NFL. And the reality is, like 1% of them are going to play in the NFL. Only the top of the top. And so, like for me, it's just really interesting. Like you see these stories of guys that like had no shot that are that are constantly bucking the trend. And I think following him, seeing him in his career, if he can do it, like the work that goes into it, will be an incredible story.
Ari, the next time I talk to you, we're going to have actual college football gameplay to react to.
Wow.
How wonderful is that?
It's a beautiful thing. And no more courts. No more courts.
Well, knock on wood. Let's not curse ourselves.
Seriously.
Ari, you're the man. Thanks for jumping on again. Appreciate you.
Take care, OC.
Ari Temkin, Big 12 Today over on TuneIn Radio. Also doing some work with the Cowboys for the Haymaker Network Star Time. And if you did not see what I'm referencing, the sort of viral moment where this young kid from New Mexico State ended up playing for the Dallas Cowboys, just go check it out. We saw a mini version of this basically everywhere BYU women's basketball played this year because Sydney Bentley or whatever, her following among people of not only the Navajo Nation, but a lot of the Indian tribes around college sports was really cool to watch. Like they show up, they make a bunch of noise, they let the presence be felt. She's a hero to a lot of these folks, and the same is true of this She Has Pete guy that gave an awesome brief post-game speech with the Cowboys as well. So pretty neat to see. If you haven't checked it out, go find it. Also, if you haven't checked out Southern Steer Butcher yet, I really don't know what you're waiting for. I've been talking about it for a few weeks now, but no more excuses because college football season is upon us. This week 0 stuff that we're talking about, Utah not playing, BYU not playing, only one Big 12 team in TCU is playing, a perfect dry run for you to kind of rehearse your tailgating, rehearse your game day grilling. And if you're going to give it the real shot, if you're going to give it the old college try, you got to do it with the actual product you're going to be making up for all your guests when they come over to watch the Utes or when you take it up to the tailgate party at the University of Utah up at Rice-Eccles Stadium in those parking lots. Southern Steer at 1705 North Redwood Road wants to get you set up with the best meats for your tailgate. They've got great prices, $3.99 a pound for the all-natural chicken, $5.99 a pound for the pork chops, the Black Angus ground beef, $7.49 a pound, and this is hormone-free, humanely raised, free-range stuff. This is not the factory farm, extra antibiotics, chemical-laden meat that you're used to from a supermarket. Southern Steer sells highly ethical and high-quality proteins, and if you want something besides beef, chicken, pork, turkey, you want something a little outside the box, just go let Dan and Aubrey Gunther, the owners, know. They'll track down a little wild boar for you. They'll get you some elk. they'll maybe get you those ostrich burgers. You just got to give them a little bit of notice, and they'll make sure that they can get it on the shelves at Southern Steer for you. Join the Southern Steer Reward Club. Tell them OC sent you. They've got full meal combos. They've got rubs, marinades, dressings, sides, everything you need for the tailgate. And college football season is here. So use week 0 as your dry run. Let Southern Steer be your supplier for all your tailgate parties and all of your game day grills. 1705 North Redwood Road down in Saratoga Springs. Tell them OC sent you. All right, Utah athletics season here in the fall actually starts with volleyball. 4 days from now, the Utah volleyball team will have its first regular season game, first regular season match. Their head coach, Alyssa DeRico, is going to join us next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Well, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. We start hour number 2 with Utah volleyball head coach Alyssa DeRico. First time on the show, Coach. Welcome. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you giving us some time. There's a bit of a theme with the fall sports up there at the University of Utah. You and Morgan Scally both taking over as first-year head coaches for legendary predecessors. On the volleyball front, tell me what it feels like to step in to the big gap left by your predecessor, Beth Lanier.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I feel very fortunate that similar to Coach Scally here, that I was able to be here for a few years, not as long as him, but long enough to know all of the support staff and know the players and know the administration and really build those connections. And Beth was great when I came here. I told her I wanted to be a head coach, and I didn't think that opportunity was going to be at Utah, but I'm grateful it was. But she really opened the doors to the program for me and allowed me to be a part of, a lot of different meetings, get exposure to how things work behind the scenes, and really had me involved in a lot, which helped make the transition pretty smooth. So it's been awesome.
So you've had a couple exhibition meets here. You had Weber State last Saturday, coming off of one with Oregon, number 25 preseason ranking for the Oregon Ducks. And, official scores and stats and things like this not kept. But what did you learn about your team? What did you see in those that either, gave you something to work on or that you liked?
Yeah, I think both exhibitions were great for us just to get some exposure, to what we look like against somebody else. It's our gym has been super competitive, so it's pretty hard to tell what we're good at and what we're not good at when you're playing against yourself. And so I think we learned a lot about where we are. We had some benchmarks in the off season that we had set of some goals to, be at a Sweet 16, Elite 8 level statistically. And with both of the scrimmages, Weber State, we met 6 of those 8 benchmarks. And against Oregon, we did really well and, met, I think, 4 of those 8 benchmarks against a really, really good team and played very well throughout the course of that match. So I think lots of good stuff was exposed offensively. I think we're really physical defensively, also really physical at the net and hard to score on with great backcourt behind it. And I think our setters have done an unbelievable job distributing the ball for our offense to really flow and find that groove.
Give me a sense of what you mean by the benchmarks. Like what target had you set that you were able to hit on some cases and not on others?
Yeah, so earning points in volleyball is a big thing. And so one of the biggest benchmarks that we were pretty behind in previous years was points per set earned as a team. We found, from the last, I think, 3 years, we did a study and earning over 18 points a set is like a pretty good indicator that you're going to win a lot of matches. And so through our first 2 scrimmages, right now we're earning over 18 points a set against both Oregon and Weber, which was awesome. Kills per set was another big indicator. We were a couple of kills per set below the benchmark. It was 14 is like a good kills per set number for top teams. And right now through the first 2, we've been at like 13.9 kills per set. So lots of good little things that we were looking at. And then on the defensive side, our dig percentage was about 10% below where we would want it to be, which is a good indicator of stopping the opponents from scoring points. And we are right now 5% higher than what the benchmark was that we found. So just lots of good stuff statistically for us to be like, okay, the work we're putting in is paying off.
You'll have to forgive some dumb questions from like a novice volleyball watcher.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But like, okay, so you've got your blockers at the net, and you want to have good defense behind them and stuff. But like in an ideal world, is a dig the kind of stat that like, yeah, we want to be able to dig it out if it gets to that point, but I don't want you to have to dig it out. Like how do you approach that as a coach to where it's like, it seems like, again, novice stuff here, where you're like, you don't want that stat. You don't want to be great in that stat if you can avoid being great in that stat. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a combination of your front court and your back court defense. So it would be like, obviously your, defensive line in football has to be great in order for running backs just not to have free reign, down the field. So our front court defense, our blockers have to be really physical, in order to make our backcourt defense easier. And so, yes and no. Like we want that number to be good, because the best teams are gonna hit around the block, hit over the block, and our backcourt has to be able to dig the ball when that happens. But our front court has to do its job to get the ball to the right place, or to terminally block it at the net. So one of our other goals was, to terminally block close to 3 balls a set, which is really elite. Through the spring, we were at that number. Right now, we are below that number, but part of that is also opponent dependent. You can't limit the run game in football if the opponent doesn't like to run the ball. If they like to throw it, you're going to have less opportunities to stop it. And so for us, we've played some teams in Weber and in Oregon that avoided the block a little bit more, which makes it more difficult to see that stat really where you would want it to be, if that makes sense. So I appreciate the questions. I love trying to explain volleyball and get new fans on board. So no question is a bad question for me.
I appreciate that you change it to football terms for my feeble mind, just knowing that that's probably a place where I might have some familiarity. That's very nice of you to do. When we talk about physicality at the net, this is another thing I'm always fascinated by, like how much of a certain aspect of these games, how much of it, in this case, volleyball, how much of that is coachable and how much of that is like you just have to recruit the players that have that in them?
For sure. I think physicality is both something you can develop in some ways, but definitely something that is, you have to recruit. And for me and for us, we don't view physicality necessarily as 100%, how tall you are in volleyball. It's more how high can you jump and how high can you play. So we have a range on our team of, 6'5" to 5'9" that are all playing front row. But the general theme is that all of our most physical attackers are touching well over 10 feet. And so, you look at a basketball rim and the rim's 10 feet. And I think the highest toucher on our team right now is 10'7.5". So they could probably dunk. And who
is touching 10'7.5" right now?
Lauren Helgeson is touching 10'7.5", but Cameron Gabadlo, our outside, is touching 10'7". I think we have 8 or 9 athletes that are 10'4" and higher, so they're easily able to go touch and grab the rim, which the height of the volleyball net is only 7'5" and so when you look at how high they're jumping and how high they can play, that's a certain level of physicality. And at the highest level, you're going to see a lot of players on the other team that are touching, 10'6" and above. And so we have to have the ability to go play at that height above the net. But then the other thing is, how hard can you hit the ball? And I just saw this on ESPN for the Pitt game, watching it back on TV, and they equated digging a volleyball hit at 55 to 60 miles an hour down the line is like facing 135 to 145 mile per hour fastball in baseball. And so you have to combine the height you play at with how hard you can hit the ball. And that's the most physical players in the country are going to jump really high and hit really hard. So we got to have a mix of both.
Lauren Helgeson, by the way, for all the local listeners, Davis High School product. So homegrown, touching 10'7.5". That's wild.
Yes.
Okay, you just brought up another number here. We had a conversation last week talking about the reaction time required to hit, and we were talking about 105-mile-an-hour fastballs in Major League Baseball because we did the math, and it's like it's literally quicker than the blink of an eye that you have to swing, to execute a swing on like a Mizurovsky pitch this year because he hit 105.5 on the gun or whatever. So when someone's elevating to hit, and you know it's a big hitter. You know it's someone that's got power, and they're going to do their best to put it on the correct angle, and obviously they're going to maybe paint those lines and things like that. You don't have less than a blink of an eye to, like, react, right? You have to anticipate where that thing is going. Coach, how is that taught? How do you coach that? Is that a film study? Is that this girl's tendency is to go deep with it? Is this someone who's going to try to spike it right down? Like, give me some sense of how your defenders, especially your backcourt defenders, are trying to anticipate where that hit is going to land.
Yeah. Very similar to other sports. We do a ton of scout video on opponents. And this year we changed it a little bit that we basically want you to be an expert on the thing that you're going to see the most. So if I'm a right side blocker, I'm going to see mostly left side attacks. And so I need to know where the ball crosses the net more often than not, what their, arm swing tendency looks like so that I can put myself in the best position to go try and block at the net against that attacker. But the backcourt is watching the same thing, but with different visual attention of, do they like to play, sharp and down in front of you? Do they like to hit deep and flat? Like, what things should you be expecting based on the set quality and that attacker's tendency? So, same thing. We study a lot of film, try and pick up, arm swing traits and characteristics and tendencies. And we have a lot of visual statistics that we can show them. We call them heat maps. That show where the attacker hits the most amount of volleyballs on the court. So hopefully, in game, they can correlate what they've seen on video with what they see happening in front of them in real time.
We're talking a little Utah volleyball here on the Sean O'Connell Show. New head coach Alyssa DeRico, kind enough to join us. I'm going to give you some unfair questions now because I think it was the Soccer World Cup that really brought this into focus for a lot of people. When Team USA got eliminated, immediately the conversation goes to, well, how do we develop the sport? How do we become elite? How do we get it better? And that trickled down, of course, into the youth sport conversation. And I'm watching the Little League World Series on a TV in front of me right now. And, youth sport obviously becomes high school sport, club sport, and then college sports. And hopefully, the Love Volleyball LOVB can continue to thrive. So there's a viable domestic league for your athletes to compete in at the professional level. But going to the youth sport front, volleyball is one of these games where it is a very robust business model, where it is a big time commitment. That the club volleyball, the travel volleyball is an all encompassing, time consuming, like life gobbling affair for the families that are trying to put their daughters onto a Utah volleyball roster or whatever. And you as a head coach, right, you're recruiting these athletes, and there's an argument about letting them play basketball too and letting them play soccer also and let them be track athletes. How soon do you specialize if you are going to specialize? And I want the parents out there listening to hear it from the horse's mouth, from the person who is signing the scholarship checks effectively. Like, this is what I need from the development of players if they want to be at this level.
Yeah. A couple of things. A lot of clubs are probably not going to like me for saying this, but I love multi-sport athletes. I think it counteracts the burnout factor, if you specialize too early and it's just the thing that you do because it's the thing that you do versus the thing that you do because it's the thing that you love. I think that there's something to be said about playing other sports for as long as you can, and specializing once you get to college where it truly is a job. And so I love multi-sport athletes. We have a ton of them on our roster that have done multiple sports, anything from softball to track to, basketball, right? Like I think that there's there's growth in being the best athlete that you can be when you get to college. And that comes from learning how to move your body in a variety of ways and learning how to handle and play different sports with different, details. So I think that that's point number one for me. I absolutely love well-rounded, athletes that have done multiple things. The second thing that kind of goes along with that is, for me, to succeed at this level and to have a chance to really make it and thrive, you truly have to love it. And I think, again, like deciding, when to specialize and to do all of that, like you truly love it if you're doing all of these things and then you decide that this is the one. Like I played basketball all the way through my senior year. I played softball through my sophomore year of high school. So I think that there's no harm in it. But I think for me, being the best athlete that you can be and the best student, which doing multiple things helps with that. And then, truly having a passion and a love for the game when you get to college is going to get you through the highs and the lows of being a college athlete, because there's going to be highs and there's for sure going to be lows and challenging moments that you gotta have your why to fall back on and why you love what you do.
All right, focusing again on your team, regular season schedule begins with a little tournament. You got Utah Valley, you've got Utah Tech. What do you anticipate? This is 4 and 5 days from now.
Yeah. I think Utah Valley is always good. We're really fortunate that the state of Utah has great volleyball. I think the last 3-4 years we've had 4 or 5 teams in the NCAA tournament between Utah Valley, Weber State, Utah State, BYU, us. Utah Tech is on the rise, and they've had a great last couple of years as well. And so I think for us, getting to play local teams, but also know that we're going to be challenged is awesome to start the year. So I'm excited. I think Utah Valley is always going to be a challenge, especially us going down there and playing at their place. But it'll be a great start to the season with them, and then Utah Tech on Saturday afternoon before we get to come back here and play Oregon State at home. So, I expect it to be just really, really good volleyball. The state as a whole has a reputation for each program, competing at the top of their conference for conference championships. So it's a good test for us early in the season.
Coach, I know it's a busy time of year, and I very much appreciate you giving us a few minutes today. Good luck this weekend, and thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
That is Utah head volleyball coach in her first year, heading into the initial campaign. Alyssa DeRico, kind enough to join us here on the Sean O'Connell Show. All right, we've got a lot lined up on the show today. Zach Moss is going to join us next. We've got the Daily Dump still to come. We've got some over-unders that I want to get into regarding the Utah offense in the 1 o'clock hour. We are rolling to start off the week. Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Well, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in the legendary Utah running back, Zach Moss, who joins us again to talk a little Utah football, a little Big 12 football, a little football in general. Zach Moss, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Doing well, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Before we get into anything Ute-specific here, I need your thoughts on this strange happening that is occurring in college football right now, where guys who are being cut from NFL preseason rosters, even some who have played in NFL preseason games, are now trying to make their way back onto college football rosters because of the fifth year of eligibility added to everyone's clock moving forward. Guys who graduated last year who exhausted their eligibility last year are, rather than accepting that and moving on, they're saying, "Oh no, well I'm not quite making it here in the NFL, so let me go play for LSU. Let me hop back into a transfer portal and see if there's a market for my services." As a man who spent time in the league and was an elite college football player and knows what both of those leagues demand of a person, what are your thoughts on guys trying to come back to college football after flirting with the NFL?
It's definitely weird. Haven't really paid a ton of attention to it outside of seeing things on social media and stuff like that. But first real reaction to it is it's definitely a weird thing. Just it's never happened before. I understand it when you are a player who you get cut, waived, whatever from the NFL as the undrafted or very low round pick. And, with the world of NIL, right, because I think that's the main thing that kind of ties it from my perspective is the NIL part of it. If you don't have NIL, I don't think guys actually want to go back to school, right? Because you can make so much. These guys are making way more money in their NIL in college. Almost doesn't really fully matter, especially if they were, pretty good players in college. You make more money in NIL in 1 year than you would do if you were on a rookie contract that puts you in the 6th or 7th round, or obviously undrafted as well. So I think most of these guys understand that the financial gain is there, and I think that's why people are way more interested, right? I think that's why you're way more interested in going back and potentially grabbing that NIL versus, trying to stick it out in the NFL or CFL or USFL, whatever those other leagues are, things of that nature, or just moving forward.
So let's say, just for the sake of a hypothetical here, you're not going to make an active roster, right? You're one of these guys. You're 6th, 7th round pick. You're an undrafted free agent. You're not going to make an active roster, but you've got a great shot to be on the practice squad, which this year is about, if you're active on the practice squad for the whole season, it's going to be $250,000, $300,000, right? Or let's say the money is comparable if you can go back, if you can bounce back and play for the University of Utah as a great second option at whatever position. You're going to make $200,000 to $300,000 there. If I put Zach Moss in those shoes and you have to make a decision as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, whatever, you can either go back to college where you will play in actual games, but I'm going to make the money equal here, so it's not a financial decision for you. Or you can be in an NFL system. You can familiarize with the NFL life. You can get in on a practice squad. Maybe you get called up. Maybe there's an injury in front of you, whatever. What would the choice be for you personally?
That's a tough one because how I am shaped mentally, even with the hypothetical. I think with the money being equal, for me, knowing what I know now about taxes, right? It would just depend on what city, what state I'm playing
Okay.
in.
Okay.
Yeah, like if I'm playing practice squad in New York, right, and that 250, you take, I think it's 46 or 48, which I've played in the state of New York, which isn't fun when it comes down to breaking down those numbers, right? Or coming back to Utah, obviously I don't know what the numbers are here because they don't have a pro team, but I'm taking my chances probably coming back to college football for one more year, and you never know. You might, just like the same way you can get called up over there. Something you could be that second guy, third guy. Something can happen in college, and you rattle off a pretty good year. So, I'll take my chances going back to college. And it's also a pretty stress free life when you come back another year. I'm pretty sure you probably already graduated and all those things as well.
Yeah, you're taking basket weaving classes and stuff like that. Probably not difficult on that front. All right, let's focus in on the University of Utah here for a second. So, camp is over, right? 3 weeks of hammering away at one another. Now you divide up the ones and the twos, and they go off and play against the scout team of an opposing offense and opposing defense. Position battles, for the most part, are supposed to be figured out at this point, and Utah had plenty of questions at important spots, like along the offensive line. The difference for these players now that you're in game prep, now that you're in like season mode instead of in camp, how significant is that difference for these guys right now?
Yeah, it's a big change. In camp, you're letting everything just go, right? You're just trying to continue to get better in every single way. You're pushing yourself much more than you do once you turn into that season mode, right? It's a hard switch you gotta make, because you go 3 weeks and you're in there every single day, and that's the only thing you know. And then once that comes down to the end, and you have to switch into season mode, right? Now you have to figure out what's my routine, right? Which is probably the biggest thing, because that's how your day, you dictate everything that's going to happen around your day, and how you work with football, and how you got to add back school into everything and stuff of that nature. So, it's a big mental shift, because you have to start thinking about X, Y, and Z, processing this and putting this over here, and just aligning yourself the right way, so that, the things off the field can run pretty smoothly, because all these things that you don't think about, these things are in camp, right? That's the point of being up at the hotel or wherever they have these guys at during camp, right? Is to get away from anything outside and just be all ball. But once you come out of that for those 3 weeks, you have to jump right back into real life and managing a lot of different hats and stuff like that. So, the biggest thing is just get into a routine, and find what works for you, what works for your body, what helps you feel good mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it may be, right? Just find the best overall routine, because that's what's going to carry you through, what we hope to be a very long season.
Zach Moss, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things Utah football. The class load is always an interesting thing, because guys are at different points in their academic career, right? And it's really foreign to me right now what that actually looks like for these players, because when I was in college, there was no NIL. There was no expectation that you were supposed to be like a business person in addition to being a college football player. You did your lift in the morning, you went to class, you got your grades, you practiced in the afternoon, and it was rinse and repeat throughout the whole season, right? It's a lot more involved now. These guys, the time commitment is significant. The guys at the top of the roster, right? Wayshawn Parker, Devin Dampier, Lance Holtzclaw, these guys have community engagement, and they got endorsements, and they got all this type of stuff. While also you're supposed to maintain your eligibility, and you're supposed to be like a student. The student athlete part is supposed to matter, at least to some people. And if you're a guy who might not make an NFL roster, you better take it seriously, because you have this opportunity to get a free education right now. So part of that routine you're talking about is a class load, and it varies so much for each person. How did you manage as an elite player with, still a slightly different era, but, with what football demanded of you and what life was eventually going to need you to have a degree for? How did you manage?
I think, with, Coach Witt and Cyrus, those two set a pretty good standard on, you know, being a student first, right? Being a student athlete, but being a student first because, you know, for me growing up where I grew up in Miami, the only thing you're thinking about is being an athlete. You're not thinking about being a student first. Essentially, you're thinking about athletic ability and playing in the NFL and things of that nature. So, coming here and those guys having the shift and all the players buying in, I think we finished top in GPA for athletes in football every year when I was there. So, it was almost like a pride thing, more so than anything that you wanted to make sure that you weren't one of those guys that were just kind of teetering on that line and stuff like that. Because also, the NFL, they look at stuff like that as well, right? That's something that they pay attention to when it's that time for you to go talk to them, be potentially in the draft and stuff like that. Obviously, totally different, right? For me, kind of closer to yours experience a little bit where, there is no expectations off the field, right? There is no public appearances. There is no this, that, and the other. Even when in the NFL, right, it was still, at least my first 3 years, it was hard to want to make a footprint outside of being the football player, right? Kind of building something for yourself and things of that nature, just because organizations, still didn't fully like that. Now I think obviously with NIL is the doors blown open. I see the guys through social media with the different restaurants and things of that nature, which is great. They continue to build. It's money in their pocket right now, but I think the big picture is that they're making connections, right? That can go a long way, no matter where they may be in life, and that's what it's all about. Is trying to make connections, and for me, I guess that was the biggest thing that I did that I paid attention to was trying to make connections. That would when you never know when you would need them.
All right, I'm going to be running some over-unders for the year, some statistical over-unders past the listeners here in a minute. So I'm going to give you a chance to answer these first. We've been examining the passing game when I put out these hypothetical numbers, and I'm going to stay on that front for just a minute here. The over-under on Utah having 2,999.5 passing yards. Does Utah have 3,000 passing yards this year or more, or do they stay under that total, given Kevin McGivern, as the new offensive coordinator? Obviously, you take into account an offensive line that might not give you quite as much time as you had last year, a healthier version of Devin Dampier, whatever Burt Ficklin's role is, maybe a better wide receiving core. We'll see. Where do you think we hit when it comes to that 3,000 yard, that magic mark of 3,000 yards passing, over or under?
I'll say over. I think he had 2,400 last year passing. I want to say. So yeah, I would say over.
The passing yardage for Devin Dampier last year, he had 2,490, and obviously he was even in that case splitting some reps. Utah as a total team finished last year with 2,816 passing yards on the season. There were 5 teams in the Big 12 Conference that had 3,000 or more. Cincinnati, Arizona, Texas Tech, TCU, and Baylor all had more than 3,000 yards. So 3,000 puts you in the top 5, at least for last year.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Like you said, the injuries to himself, the splitting of the reps to some degree, obviously, and I mean, you talk about the way we rushed the ball last year with that type of production we had on the ground. You would think that number would probably be even a little smaller there. So, I'm optimistic, but I agree. I think from everything I've heard, this roster, at least from the wide receiver position, is really, really talented and got a lot of depth there. So I think they're going to lean into that a lot this year.
To Zach's point, last year, Utah, the number one rushing offense in the conference, 3,462 yards on the ground. The offense averaged 6 yards a carry, no matter who had the ball in their hand. That's healthy, Zach.
Yeah.
Any insight you can give us on what you personally are going to be doing? Are we allowed to talk about that yet when it comes to this upcoming football season?
I'm not sure, honestly.
All right.
But yeah, it'll be some interesting things happening from that standpoint of things. But more so, just looking forward to seeing a lot of wins and rice eccles, and hopefully getting to that championship game, the conference championship game, and then going to do something in the playoffs.
We're 10 days away from Utah kicking off the season against Idaho up there on a Thursday night. So I know we'll be talking to you next week as well, Zach, but it's getting closer, man. We're almost there.
Yes, sir. Almost there. Football is almost back.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate you.
No problem, man. Have a good one.
Zach Moss, running back legend at the University of Utah. He thinks Utah hits the over on 3,000 yards passing. We'll unpack what that would mean for the offense and do some comparisons when we get to it in the 1 o'clock hour. Taking a quick break here. We're coming back with a little over-under. We're coming back with a little daily dump here on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, hooking you up with the daily dump every day that we do a show. The truck with the duck can do the drain cleaning. If you've got a leaky faucet, call them. Or go to valleyplumbing.com. Just make an appointment without even calling. If you have excavation needs, they can handle that. If your air conditioner is acting funny, they can handle that. If your furnace making a weird smell when you turn it on in the fall, you have to have the truck with the duck get out there as quick as you can. Tell them OC sent you. They take good care of us. All right, this is a family show, so I'm going to be careful. I'm going to be delicate with how I talk about this. But NFL owners, man, they have some weird predilections, it seems. We all know about Robert Kraft and his affinity for low-priced massages, right? We learned about that, unfortunately, some years back. And now, not only do the 49ers have an electrical substation problem, but their owner, Jed York, has allegedly been arrested and thrown some charges for being caught up in a sting in Ohio at a trailer park. This is the owner of the San Francisco 49ers, people. What are we doing, NFL owners? You know, we talked about how the NBA has like some weird owner situations going on. The NFL owners are strange too, and apparently at least two of them have the same tendency to seek out low-budget entertainment when they're in cities that they don't live in. This is gross and very, very, very odd.
Is the take just that billionaires are weird?
I think the take might be that billionaires, and maybe this is how billionaires stay billionaires, because even when they're indulging in vices that they should not be indulging in, they seek out the low-budget option.
Always frugal.
Jed York allegedly he responded to an undercover ad on a well-established website for a certain type of rendezvous and arranged for a certain level of activity to happen between himself and an undercover plant for $140. Arrested in East Palestine, Ohio, by the East Palestine, Ohio Police Department. The Wheat Hill Mobile Home Community, which is not a place that NFL owners are frequenting that often, I imagine.
Really? No mobile home communities? That's not a regular haunt for NFL owners? Oh. Yeah, I brought it up last week about the weird stuff that's happening, and in many of the cases, unethical stuff, possibly even more kind of serious stuff happening in the NBA that's getting a lot of attention. But NFL's had some weird scandals like this too. Just the billionaires who run sports leagues specifically, OC, they're just showing just how weird billionaires are seemingly weird billionaires are compared to the rest of us who have much less money for whatever reason.
I was just looking up because even as a 49ers fan, I must confess I've not been paying very close attention to their preseason schedule, and I was like, well, why is the 49ers owner in East Palestine, Ohio? Were they there for a matchup with the Browns or something? No.
He just decided he wanted to be there for this specific thing, I guess.
He's originally from Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
So,
Ohio guy.
I guess that maybe he was back on the home front, back in the home state. This is bizarre.
Oh, see, Shouldn't it be called West Palestine, Ohio, by the way? Like, that is far west from actual Palestine.
From actual Palestine? I guess it just depends on your point of reference.
Yeah, I guess.
What if you're going the other way?
I guess if
it's
you
even
go
further east.
If you go east over the international date line instead of west over Africa and Europe, I suppose
it's even further
it
east.
is east.
It's further east of Palestine than it is west of Palestine if you travel east.
Is there a? I wonder if there's a
globe.
Palestine, Ohio, and this is East Palestine. Maybe that's it. This is east of Palestine.
Almost certainly, Palestine, Ohio. Yeah, Palestine, village in Ohio.
Okay, well there you go. This East Palestine is east of that.
You know what the extra big problem that Jed York has in this story is that far more than Robert Kraft, who's I think a lot more recognizable, like if I asked you, hey, do you know what Jed York looks like?
I would say I have no idea.
You'd be like, he looks like every mugshot you've ever seen in every sting that they have done on this front.
He's a younger guy compared to the other owners.
Yeah,
too.
he's on the young side.
Yeah,
but he's still like the mugshot looks like every single undercover sting operation mugshot when someone is trying to get themselves an illicit form of entertainment for $140. Jed, here's what I need you to do. I need you to focus on the electrical substation that is deteriorating the health of your players, please.
I mean, I don't know. I guess you didn't pay attention to that video I sent you last week. It's not really doing that.
It is, though. We know it is.
You're still right, despite any of the scientific evidence that may or may not be saying that it's actually not hurting them more than anything else would hurt them. The move is still just a move. Practice facility.
Just move. Enes Kanter Freedom got himself kicked out of an WNBA game. Chicago Sky, Indiana Fever, and
former Jazz man
Enes Kanter has decided that he's inserting himself into the volatile conversation surrounding transgender athletes and where they should be allowed to compete, where they should not be allowed to compete, etc. It's a major political hot-button issue for people. Obviously, it's something that is kind of ramping up conversationally in the WNBA. And I want to say this about a very sensitive issue. There are a lot of people that are concerned about this issue for the right reasons. There are also a lot of people who are making their opinion on this known for everything except the right reasons. And I think Enes Kanter might fall into that category. Like, even if you agree with what he is saying and what his stance is, and his stance is that in a place like the WNBA, biological females should be the only ones allowed to compete. That's his stance. I don't think that is a controversial stance. I think that is totally fine. I think that is the way things should be. I am not making this my life's mission because I am not going to go out there and disingenuously pretend that this is the most important thing to me, that I need to be part of this conversation, that I have an emotional stake in it, a political stake in it, or any other kind of stake in it. I'm not going to act like I am indignant over the idea that female athletes are not protected in the most diligent way possible, right? The WNBA has a ton of problems. The WNBA needs to get its you-know-what in order on a lot of different fronts. This is not a concern right now in the WNBA.
We don't have trans athletes playing in the WNBA.
Correct.
There's no trans athletes playing in college because there's been a law passed. It was an executive order by the president when he came in that banned all of those. So, like, this is not a threat right now. People like Enes Kanter are using this to get attention.
He just wants you talking about him.
And a bunch of the other people that you hear talking about it in the similar way that Enes Kanter is trying to talk about it, they're trying to score a bunch of political points, and you and I don't have to help them with that. Like it's okay to recognize that there is not much of a threat with this, and also agree that if this were to become a threat, yes, we do not want we want women, not trans women, playing women's sports and girls' sports. Like that, it's okay to have both of those things that you're thinking at the same time.
It's I think it's like it's a little bit grotesque to be someone like Enes Kanter, who is just, it seems as he's a very politically minded individual, right? Especially when, he's from Turkey.
He got himself banned from his home country because of his political advocacy.
Yeah. And I am, without having a ton of knowledge of it, I am sympathetic to anyone who feels like the ruling class, the leadership in their country is a danger to their fellow countrymen and fellow countrywomen. And in his case, to his family, he felt like their rights were being suppressed and things like that. By all means, go ahead, talk about that, advocate for or against whatever you want to advocate for or against. This feels disingenuous, and Enes Kanter showing up at a game and getting into a verbal altercation with players on the court and being removed from the game, whether that was the right move for security to actually kick him out of the game or not, it's like, what are you doing there? Why are you taking the cameras off the female athletes that you are pretending to care about so much?
Trying to be an advocate for.
That you are pretending to be in support of and wanted to protect from this invisible boogeyman that is not actually a real threat to them right now. Why are you now stealing shine from a league that can't afford to keep having sideshows happen right now? They are having their moment. The WNBA is having their moment of popularity, of rising attention, of revenue. The players just got a new collective bargaining agreement where they 10x'd the minimum salary for not bad players, but for borderline players. I mean, and yet they still can't get out of their own way with some of the actual administrative stuff, with the way that Caitlin Clark is fouled all the time, with the way that their game is refereed against one another, with the conversation, the sort of sniping back and forth between the biggest players and the top coaches and things like that. It's
and a perceived lack of leadership from the commissioner, however true that is.
They got real problems, man. Enes, you don't need to be there adding to this.
Yeah, and listen, if you watch the video, he didn't make the first move, at least to the video that was posted. It didn't appear that he made the first move and stepped onto the court to try to approach the Chicago Sky player who he got in a verbal altercation with. It seemed to be she saw him and she got really pissed, and she just made a big bucket, and she's feeling all the adrenaline from that. She started talking and yelling at him because she got really mad about what we're talking about, the disingenuous stuff, the way that Enes Kanter has seemingly inserted himself into this hot button conversation and made himself the center of it for this moment. Like that, I think it's fair for her to have had that kind of emotional reaction, and it's fair for her to be talking ish, is because she's full of adrenaline from making a big shot and, from playing in a tight, hotly contested game, right? I don't know that it was fair for Kanter to get thrown out, but also that doesn't mean that him being there, like you're explaining, OC, doesn't mean that him being there courtside wearing the shirt that he was wearing, which we don't need to go into that. You're trying to instigate that reaction. You don't act like a victim when you get thrown out after you get the reaction you're clearly trying to instigate.
Well,
it's just very disingenuous, like you're saying.
If someone's gonna yell at you and whatever, he's been on the floor before. He's been in that position where somebody said something he didn't like, somebody wore something that he didn't like, and maybe he said something, maybe he didn't. I don't have the Rolodex of every time Enes Kanter had a conversation with somebody sitting courtside or not.
The video's not clear on that either. Yeah,
it's just weird, man. It's just a weird look. And one of the things that bothers me about the sort of modern pundit speaker trend in our country is that, like, there are very important issues at play when it comes to the gender politics and things like that. And we've talked about them some on the show, and I made my stance clear. I think that that those athletes, transgender athletes, I think should be given an opportunity to compete in their own space with other athletes that share their identity or that share their biology, or however way you want to say that. I don't think anyone should be kept from competing. I think everyone should be given an opportunity. If that means in high school sports, youth sports, pro sports, you have separate categories, different leagues, I'm all for it. Like, let people participate in sport. I do think it's important that biological females be competing only against, unless they're in co-ed sports, only be competing against other from birth biological females, because there are physiological differences. That's not a hateful thing to say. That's a practical thing to say. I don't think it's bad that Enes Kanter has that same belief. I do think that trying to make yourself into some martyr about it or trying to antagonize about it is the dead wrong thing to do. I think that the moral thing to do, I think that the Christian thing to do, I think that the upstanding thing to do is to show compassion for people who want to be participating in sports, who feel like they don't have a place to. Let's provide them a place to without compromising the rights or safety or happiness or fairness for the majority. And pretending that this is like your life's mission now, when you jumped into the conversation 5 minutes ago, is disingenuous. And people who are being that way should be called out for it.
Yeah, there's a much better way of going about it, Enes Kanter, if you are for real about being an advocate for women's sports in this way. There are many much better ways to go about it, and I hope, for the sake of women's sports, we can get to a point with the WNBA, as far as that's the main league that everyone has their eyeballs on right now in the summertime. NWSL, the AUSL softball league, that we can stop making mountains out of socio-political storylines and focus more on what they're doing on the court, what great athletes they are. Because yes, we make big deals about socio-political stuff that happen in men's games, but they don't become the entire conversation, though, the way that it's become in women's games. And I just think women deserve to be talked about for their athletic prowess, just like we talk about men for their athletic prowess, amidst a bunch of other controversy.
It was bad when everyone decided that Colin Kaepernick kneeling down during a national anthem was the most important thing in the world for them to have an opinion on. That was a bad thing for the NFL, for sports fans, for all, like, that was stupid. For everyone to make that the number one talking point of their political, sport, locker room, water cooler conversation, that sucked. That was dumb. For Sophie Cunningham to have said something to the effect expressing kind of what I just expressed, and for people to decide that that is the most important thing that's going on in the WNBA right now, that sucks, guys. It does. That is bad for the sport. That is bad for a league that 5 minutes ago finally got some attention. Like, the NFL was always going to survive the Colin Kaepernick thing and was always going to recover from the Colin Kaepernick thing, but that was very polarizing for people, and it was problematic for the NFL for a very short time, and that league had already established itself as the king of everything. The WNBA is nowhere near that status. And this has crept in to become a major distraction and a major detriment to what you're talking about, James, attention being paid to the actual competition. It's a sports soap opera right now instead of being a sports product, and that sucks.
Yeah, and Listen, I say everything that I say not to be like, okay, and everyone has a moral and ethical obligation to watch women's sports. No, like do whatever you want, but let's give it the same kind of treatment that we give men's sports amongst controversial stuff that's bigger in the game. We still talk about how great the games are. We still talk about how great athletes they are. I think there's plenty of reason to be doing that. If you are someone that pays attention to WNBA, covers sports like we do, and there's talking points that come up I think there's plenty of reason to be like to focus more on the games and be like this, and focus on the great athletic feats that they're doing in WNBA and other women's sports that we talk about.
The way the NFL was able to, like, there was a certain amount of fatigue over that whole conversation, right? And the way the NFL got over it was because the conversation was always going to return to competition. It was always going to return to who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's the best quarterback, who's the best running back, who's the best wide receiver, who's the best defense right now. It was always going to swing back to that, even if it got distracting for a while with the socio-political stuff. I don't know, I can't speak with any level of confidence that the WNBA is always going to swing back to, hey, look at this. Caitlin Clark, best shooter we see in basketball, men or women, like that's an exaggeration. But whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not confident that the WNBA is established enough that the conversation is going to return eventually to the competition, whereas there was never a question it would after the Kaepernick thing. Yeah. Or after the Ray Rice thing, or after any other innumerable controversies that have happened in the NFL. We always knew the conversation was going to return to the game. I can't say with any level of confidence that the same is true in the WNBA. And that is very, very unfortunate, and it's why they need a new commissioner to show better leadership here and to push things in that direction.
Absolutely.
I want you to put this phone number in your phone right now. I want you to take it out. I want you to go to your contacts list. I want you to put in 801-355-5550. And even though I'm asking you to save that number in your phone, I also hope that you never have to use this number, because if you do, it means that you were probably in an accident. Maybe you had a slip and fall situation at work. Maybe something fell on you. Maybe you walked under a ladder. Whatever it is, the advocates, UtahAdvocates.com, are available 24/7, 365. I don't want you to have to call them, but heaven forbid you get in a car accident, you get hurt, there's a situation where maybe you are entitled to some compensation for an injury. They are the right people to call. Any time of the day, any day of the year. 801-355-5550. You're walking down the sidewalk, you trip. You get in a little car accident, you get in a fender bender, maybe you get into something a little bit more serious or severe. You accidentally chop a finger or a toe off. You do not deserve to get in an accident. You do not deserve to get injured, but you do deserve an advocate. They will fight for you. They will fight for compensation for you. They will fight against the insurance companies that are always trying to prevent paying things out. 801-355-5550 or go to UtahAdvocates.com. You deserve an advocate. And the advocates are here to help. All right, you heard me ask the over-under question to Zach Moss when he joined us a little bit earlier. I have a couple more numbers I want to throw at you, and you're going to tell me if Utah can get over or under these numbers offensively in the upcoming 2026 football campaign. Sean O'Connell Show in hour number 3, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Coming up in our next segment, 10 minutes from now, we'll discuss a new list from The Athletic naming the top teams from the last 50 years in college football who have not yet won a national championship. Where does Utah fall on that list? I will tell you in 10 minutes. Right now, I've got an over-under I want to explore with you. We talked about it. I teased it with Zach Moss. We let him answer the question first. The over-under set for Utah passing yards this coming season, 2,999.5. Do they get over 3,000 yards? Do they hit 3,000 yards or not in this Utah offense that has, knock on wood, a healthy Devin Dampier, that has a wide receiver room that Morgan Scalley has said really nice things about, that has some returning production, although it's player returning production from a pass receiving standpoint, that has a couple of Swiss Army knife type players that will be catching some passes, things like that. To give it context, 3,000 yards would make Utah the sixth best in last year's offense, or last year's conference, I should say. 3,000 passing yards would put them right behind Cincinnati, who had 3,006. So let's say you get over 3,000. You're probably not going to hit exactly 3,000. You'd be right there in that top five with Cincinnati from last year. Just being a good passing team by itself, by the way, does not win you a ton of games. BYU, runner-up in the conference last year, was 8th in the conference in passing yards. In passing yards per game, I should say. Total yardage, over 3,000 or under 3,000 for the University of Utah. 2999.5. TCU, 3,899 passing yards. Excuse me, Texas Tech had that. TCU, 3,771. Baylor, 3,715. Arizona, 3,318. BYU, 3,100. Cincinnati, 3,006. Remember when we were talking about passing yards per game last week and trying to get over 235 yards per game in the passing world? I think Utah, again, I think this is a threshold that you kind of have to reach for two reasons. I think you're not going to have the number one rushing offense in the conference this year like you did last year with Utah. They'll still be top five in that category. They'll still be very respectable in that category. They've got the quarterback and running back personnel to do it, to be determined if they have the offensive line personnel to do it. And that same question exists when it comes to the passing game. So as you're asking yourself this question, can you hit 3,000 yards or more in the passing game? It is, of course, dependent on your quarterback first and foremost. Secondarily, I do believe it's dependent on your offensive line. I think that the wide receiver room that we're optimistic about is actually the third most important piece of this equation for the University of Utah. Having great pass catchers is a wonderful thing. It's especially wonderful if your quarterback can stay upright in the pocket. It's fantastic if your quarterback has the arm and the accuracy to deliver the ball to those pass catchers. The pass catchers are the egg. They're not the chicken. The chicken is the passer. And maybe even more than, well, the offensive line is like the chicken coop in the chicken and the egg conversation. Does the chicken have a safe place from which to lay its egg? That's where the offensive line comes in. $3,000 yards. Will Utah hit it over or under 2999.5 for this Utah football offense? 877-353-0700. Tell me what you think about that number total on the Utah football front. All right, who is the best college football program without a national title in the last 50 years? Antonio Morales of The Athletic assigned a scoring system. All right, national championship game appearance, 10 points. AP top 5 finish, 8 points. Conference championship, 6 points. A major bowl game, a BCS game, a New Year's Six game, a college football appearance, 4 points. A 10-win season, 2 points. A top 25 finish, 2 points. And if you had back-to-back losing seasons, you got docked a point. Those are the scoring criteria over the last 50 years of college football. Who is the best team without a title in the last 50 years? Where does Utah fall on this ranking? We'll get to that next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Oh, finally a list from The Athletic that's going to put the Utah BYU longevity of relevance debate to rest. I'm sure that nobody in Provo or wearing royal blue or the stolen Aggie blue that they adopted for a while, I'm sure none of them will disagree with what The Athletic has to say about the top teams, the top college football programs of the last 50 years that have not won a national title. Who is the best program in the national landscape of college football that has not won it all? James, you haven't looked at this, right?
I have not.
Okay. I gave you the criteria that was established by and Antonio Morales. I love pieces like this where he just kind of like made this up. You get 10 points if you played in a national championship game, but you didn't win.
Yeah.
Like, just assigning points arbitrarily is wonderful. But he obviously put a lot of thought to it. 10 points for a championship game appearance. 8 points for a top 5 finish in the Associated Press poll. 6 points for a conference championship. 4 points for a major bowl appearance. That's BCS New Year's Six college football playoff, because the last 50 years have seen a lot of alteration of what's considered the most major bowls.
A lot of new terminology with all that, yeah.
10-win seasons are good for 2 points. Top 25 finishes are good for 2 points. That's top 25 outside of the top 5. And then if you have consecutive losing seasons, they dock you a point for each consecutive losing season. Based on that scoring criteria, the best program of the last 50 years that has not won a national championship is...
Is it Oregon?
It's Oregon. Oregon has 2 national championship game appearances for 20 points. They finished in the top 5 8 times.
Yeah. It's a lot. They have been a national championship caliber program for a very long time at this point.
Without actually winning one.
Without winning one, yeah.
In 50 years, they've won 10 conference championships. They've been in 12 major bowl games. They've had 16 10-win seasons. They finished inside the top 25, but outside of the top 5 13 times, bringing the total to 21.
Man, that 13 times, as impressive as that is, OC, that almost seems low.
Yeah.
Because since, was it Dennis Dixon, mid to late 2000s, almost 20 years ago now? Since then, it feels like they've always finished in the top 25, but apparently not.
So Oregon is the number 1 program to never have won a national championship according to this criteria. Number 2 is one that actually surprised me more. Oregon made sense. You got the guess. Number 2, do you want to take a crack at number 2?
Let's see. It's a surprising one to you.
For me, it was surprising. Probably recency bias.
I'm blanking right now.
I've enjoyed making fun of their ineptitude as of late. But again, this goes back 50 years. Texas A&M is the number 2.
Okay.
They've had 0 championship game appearances. They've had 2 top 5 finishes. They've had 7 conference championships in the last 50 years. They've been in 10 major bowl games and had 10 10-win seasons. They've also finished in the top 25 19 times, so more times than Oregon.
More times than Oregon. See, that's surprising.
You know what's crazy, too? They've only had 1 back-to-back losing season scenario at Texas A&M in the last 50 years.
Since the mid-70s, I guess is what that would be.
Number 3 on this list is Virginia Tech. The number 1 in the Big 12 Conference comes in at number 4 on the list. Which Big 12 team is this?
Number 4 on the list.
Number 4 nationally, and it is a Big 12 team.
Is it Oklahoma State?
It is TCU.
TCU.
1 championship game appearance, 3 top 5 finishes, 9 conference championships, 4 major bowl game appearances, 13 10-win seasons, and 11 times they've finished in the top 25. But they also got docked severely. They've had back-to-back-to-back losing seasons to the tune of minus 14 points. So they got 138 points. Really, it was all of this goes back 50 years. All of this is since 2000, basically.
Yeah, because with TCU, and you could say similarly to Oregon, Virginia Tech's a similar one. You maybe go back to 1990 with them. 1990 to like 2010. Those 20 years is where they made all that hay there. With Texas A&M, I was going to say it's the opposite. It's like, without looking at the data, the data probably proves this perception wrong a little bit, but the perception for me, OC, is from 1976 or 75, whatever the first year with this is, to 2000 was when they probably racked up most of those points.
You're absolutely right. They've only had 3 10-win seasons. Of their 10, only 3 of those have been in the last 30 years. They haven't had a conference title since 1998.
It doesn't surprise me, OC, because it's like Texas A&M is one of those traditional, not blue bloods because they're not a championship team, but traditional upper echelon programs.
They're like
that haven't done much lately.
Yeah. So TCU, the top Big 12 team, and obviously part of their earnings here in the points was when they were a Mountain West Conference team with Utah and BYU there. UCLA is very similar to Texas A&M. What have you done for me lately? Not much, but they're number 5 on this list according to the scoring criteria. They haven't appeared in a major bowl game since 1998 when they were in the Rose Bowl.
Wow.
So they accomplished a lot before that. They also have one national title from 1954 that they claim, but doesn't count on this list because this one only goes back to 1976.
This is just in the last 50 years, how many national titles?
Number 6 on the list is Wisconsin. Number 7 is Iowa. Number 8 is West Virginia. Number 9 is the University of Utah. So according to the athletic scoring criteria, the 9th best non-national championship program in the last 50 years of college football is the University of Utah. So they're top 10 in the country in the last 50 years in terms of teams that have not achieved national championship status.
They're top 10. So you're saying they're top 10 of the teams that are probably somewhere near top 15 in the country every year?
They're top 10. They're number 9 of the top 17 or so. No national championship game appearances, 2 AP top 5 finishes, 7 conference championships. 4 times they played in a BCS New Year's 6 big-time bowl, 11 10-win seasons, 10 top 25 finishes, and in the last 50 years, they've been docked 5 points for back-to-back losing seasons.
Yeah, see, there's just been a lot of consistency and a high floor, if you will, from Utah football. The worst years, even in the worst years that they've had, not many of those have been losing seasons. We can name 3 in the last 15 years, but like there's so many more programs that in a 15-year span and a 50-year span that have had way more of those losing seasons consecutively or otherwise than Utah, which is a thing that you should be proud of if you're a Utah football fan, and that program should be proud of.
And again, basically all this work has been done since the mid-'90s, since Ron McBride. Basically all of it has been since him. Houston is number 10 on this list. And then it goes Michigan State, Arizona State, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Stanford, Syracuse, Baylor, Kansas State, Louisville, Oklahoma State. So dang near the whole Big 12 conference is on this list somewhere, but BYU is not.
Yeah, that's
I will
surprising.
say this. Part of the scoring criteria is conference championships, and independence for a decade means you can't earn any points there.
There's that, and I wonder if their 84 national championship disqualified them too. But I don't know if it's.
Oh wait, no, it would. You're right. That's the whole. That's the whole.
I guess
crux
that's
of
it. I guess that's it.
They won. You're right. I'm an idiot because this list goes back past 1984. So BYU is one of those national championship programs.
The reason I said that kind of as a question is because I don't know if the Athletic.
Are you saying the Athletic doesn't universally recognize their
I just
national championship?
Which which type of national championship is universally recognized, because that was the coaches poll championship for BYU, and there's also the Associated Press poll champion used to be, and then you had the BCS champion, which was the computers, and then AP still named their own. It's very convoluted. It's almost in the the combat sports world, all the different belts you can win.
Well, but BYU was consensus national title. AP coaches and football writers. They were the only.
Bad.
They were only undefeated team in the nation that year.
Okay, that's my bad. I thought it was the coaches poll champion. They were the consensus champion. So if you consensus meaning not all of those polls, but enough of those to say you're the undisputed champion. Okay.
So the
shout
rest,
out. Sorry, Cougs fans. I did not mean to enact violence on you with my.
I think more importantly, the rest of the Big 12. So Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Baylor, Cincinnati, Arizona State, Houston, Utah, TCU. That is 8 teams from a 16-team conference that are among the bridesmaids but never the brides.
Yeah, and there's trying to think of Iowa State is not listed, right? Or were they?
Iowa State not listed here.
So they're a non-national champion that did not make the list, did not qualify for this list. There's Kansas. That would have been Texas. Texas Tech was not there, or was Texas Tech in there?
Texas Tech is not on this list, and because it goes back 50 years.
I don't think that they had won a national championship in the 70s or 80s.
Texas Tech.
You got Arizona. Also that did not qualify for this list.
Texas Tech
not a champion.
Has only won 4 national championships in athletics history.
Yeah, okay.
They won the women's basketball in 1993 with Cheryl Swoops leading the program.
Cheryl Swoops.
They won the men's outdoor track and field championship in 2019, and they've won indoor track and field in 2024 and this last year in 2026.
Okay, so track and field power, Texas Tech.
I actually didn't even know that.
I didn't know that either. So there's at least 4 of the other teams that were not national championship winners, as far as we know, in the last 50 years, but did not qualify for this list. Did not score high enough on this list. So there's at least 12 Big 12 teams that would have been that could be on this list. BYU might be. It's the only one I'm thinking of right now of the current Big 12 teams that has won a national championship in 50 years.
And
right?
Colorado,
that's right.
Colorado won it in 1990.
So maybe 2. So there's 14 potentially that could have qualified to be on this list, but 8 of them made it.
You love to see it.
Yeah.
Actually, you hate to see it because it means that you're not among the Indianas, Ohio States, Michigans, Georgias, Alabamas, Clemsons, LSUs, Florida States, etc. that don't have to carry the dubious distinction of being a great team that just can't quite get it done.
The other kind of sucky thing for the conference, if you view it from this lens, is their 2 champions in the last 50 years were those championships are 36 and 42 years old. So that's the other unfortunate thing. It's almost like they honorary not champion because it was that long ago. You can't really say that about obviously the Big Ten winning the last 3 years, SEC dominating for so many years before that, Clemson and Florida State and Miami holding the flag, holding the banner for ACC many times in those 50 years. Big 12's kind of the only ones that unfortunately can say that.
1990 turns out was the biggest year in college football history for the current Big 12.
Okay.
Because that year, the current Big 12 won the national championship and the Heisman Trophy. Colorado won the national championship. Ty Detmer won the Heisman Trophy.
Oh, Kansas State, that might have been at the beginning of Bill Snyder's big run of them like never missing a bowl game and hardly ever winning less than double-digit games too. There was like a 12 to 15-year run of that at Kansas State, and that was near the beginning of that. So, yeah, the early 90s were huge for the current Big 12.
Who's the last Ohio State Buckeye to win the Heisman Trophy?
Troy Smith, I think.
Is he? I'm looking down the list right now.
Unless I'm missing somebody since 2006.
No, you're right. Troy Smith.
He's the only one because I've been a fan since about the turn of the century. So he's the only one that I have actually been.
Okay.
That I've actually, watched as an Ohio State fan.
Wow, that's actually kind of a long time for Ohio State.
Yeah. Thanks for rubbing that in.
Who won the national championship that year?
In 2006, I don't want to talk about it. There was a certain lopsided anagram type score that I refuse to think about. OC, I'm sorry.
Oh, weird.
Your former coach may have coached the national champions.
He may have. All right. Great stuff from The Athletic. Utah, the 9th best non-national championship winning team in the history of college football. You've heard me give you the number 801-850-9100 many, many times. You've heard me tell you that Advanced Window Products, the number one window replacement company in Utah, lifetime warranty. I've given you all of the checkpoints I think you need, but let me tell you something. Let me give you like the alternative path here. If you don't call Advanced Windows and you don't get a lifetime warranty on the windows and you don't go with the number one quality, a company that keeps improving their product over and over and over again, and the attention to detail is there and the service is there. Let me tell you what else can happen, all right? I've lived in my current home for 6 years now, and we remodeled the house. We bought it in the Avenues after I won my big fight. We bought a house. We put a bunch of cash into remodeling this thing, okay? And part of that was replacing windows in the house. And you get $2,500 off 10 windows or more from Advanced Window Products. We replaced like 28 windows or something stupid, okay? It was an expensive remodel project. And I'm not telling you that just to complain. What I want to complain about, though, is the fact that we did have some problems with our vinyl replacement windows, with the frames expanding in the heat and then shrinking in the cold, and it causing some warping and some cracking on the vinyl window frames, which, by the way, Advanced Window Products, their frames don't do that. The company we went with, that was a problem, right? And, of course, they were newish windows at the time, so I made a phone call, and I was like, hey, you need to fix this for me. And the runaround I got was absolutely ridiculous and is a reason enough that I will never go with anyone besides Advanced Window Products for the rest of my ownership of a home. Because there was no lifetime warranty. There was no one-stop shop. There was no, the salesperson and the installer and the warranty is all handled by one person. It was a factory window installed by someone who's a licensed contractor, sold by someone to that licensed contractor who is not actually an employee of the factory. And so everyone, like that Spider-Man meme, was just pointing at the other guy saying it's his problem, he's got to fix it. It's his problem, he's got to fix it. Yes, it's under warranty, but he's the one who has to pay for the replacement. He's the one who has to eat the cost. It took me 7 months to get this thing resolved. That is not the case at Advanced Window Products. 801-850-9100. That's the call you make to get the sales team on the phone, to get the quote for new windows, to get the $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. And if you call that same number 10 years from now when you have some unexpected problem with the window, they're going to answer. They're going to say, yeah, we'll fix that window because it's ours. It was our installer. It was our salesperson. It was our window manufactured right here in Salt Lake City. Do yourself a favor. Avoid the runaround that I got. AdvancedWindows.com. Tell them OC sent you. We've got 4 passes to the Utah State Fair coming up September 10th through the 20th at the Fair Park. We'll give those away with some topical trivia next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Four passes to the Utah State Fair. Coming up September 10th through the 20th at the Fair Park. If you could answer this question at 877-353-0700. I asked an over-under question on Utah's passing offense. Can they hit over 3,000, 2999.5 this upcoming season? Are you going over or under that number? Let's say they had hit 3,000 last year. probably win one extra game. Where did Utah's passing offense rank in the Big 12 Conference last year? We talked about it during the segment. Where did Utah's passing offense rank in last year's Big 12 Conference? If you can tell me where out of 16 teams they came in with their total passing yardage, you'll get 4 passes to the Utah State Fair coming up at the Fair Park September 10th through the 20th. The Drive with Spence Checketts is next. He's back in the chair. He's here with me. How are you, Spence?
As a world traveler, meaning you, because I was in Orlando over the weekend.
I was in Tampa. You should have come to the fights.
Oh, were you in Tampa?
Yeah.
Oh, I actually should have. We did Universal. Have you ever been to Universal Studios?
I have.
It's got some good roller coasters, man. Your boy over here
Did you go
likes
to Harry Potter World?
Yeah, Harry Potter World was awesome.
Some butterbeer?
I did. Even as a non-Harry Potter, I'm not a hater. I just don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Quidditch.
Yeah, okay, good job. Good reference.
Voldemort, we're not supposed to say his name.
We can here. We're safe from him.
Which house are you in?
I'm a Gryffindor, obviously.
Oh, okay. Isn't that supposed to be the most awesome one?
It's the awesome one.
Anyway, what's this? Because our travel scenario was such a nightmare. I got back. We were supposed to get back at 1:30.
Okay.
And then it turned to 6:30. I got home at midnight.
Oh.
And we experienced a new travel faux pas. So apparently the guy who was supposed to fill up the plane with gas, like, I don't know what the equivalent of a pump is for a plane.
Yeah.
But he put the gas pump or whatever in the plane and then, like, took a coffee break or something.
Overfilled.
Massively.
Okay.
Massive gas spill on the tarmac. Suddenly we're surrounded by emergency vehicles. And then it turned into the whole, like, the mechanic is like, I got to finish my log. I'm like, dude, get us in the air and finish your log when we're flying. I wondered, with all your travels, you must have some wild delay stories. And I don't know that there's anything worse than sitting on a tarmac in an airplane for 6 hours.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad. That one, I can't decide if it's better or worse when it's like something like that where you're just like, oh, geez, okay, that's like actually problematic.
Yeah.
The most aggravating thing is when they're just like, yeah, so this happened. This is the most recent delay I experienced. So apparently, I didn't even know this until 2 weeks ago. When they close the door, part of closing the door is they pressurize the emergency slides inside the door.
Okay.
It like fills up with air while it's inside the door so that in the event of an emergency, you can blast that door open and the slide is like already just trying to expand out of the door.
Okay.
It's already like
That makes sense.
filled up and ready to go, right? I didn't even know that, but get on the plane. They're like, all right, we're ready to take off. The boarding door is closed and we're off to, oh, wait a second. I'm getting a warning light. The slide inside one of the doors, not like all of the doors, the slide inside one of the doors is not working, is not inflating.
Okay.
And we're just like sitting there and it ends up being 5 or 6 hours. And I'm like, wait, could we all just sign like a waiver that like, hey, if the plane crashes, we don't really believe that the emergency slide's actually going to save us anyway. So, like, let's just go.
Yeah.
But they have to do it. They have to check every box on these planes.
Yeah,
And
that the monotony of and look, let's stay safe, right? If the slide happens to save a life, let's get the slide out. But it's the same deal. So it was a 2-leg flight. We land in Denver, and then we're flying from Denver to Salt Lake, and it's the same deal where they have to get up in like your inflatable vests. I'm like, we're flying from Denver to Salt Lake. We're not landing in water.
you never know.
Let's skip over the vest thing when we're flying over the Rockies. Okay, it's not applicable. One more question.
Okay.
As two fathers in here,
Yeah.
where do you stand on disciplining other people's children?
Like strangers' children?
Let's say loose acquaintances. You do not you don't know the family that well.
if they are doing something that is going to damage my property or is going to hurt my kid, I will discipline them. But beyond that, it's for them to handle.
Yeah, I'm very anti-disciplining other people's children. I'm also very anti-allowing my child to be the one that's misbehaving.
Yeah.
So
did you have to make a decision?
Well, I look, I'm not going to say anything to anyone else's children. Wife, I'm like the mafia, okay? Wife and kids off limits. Not going to ever say anything bad to your wife or your kid. I'm leaving them alone, okay? That's disrespectful to you. So I will not do that. But there was a group of children on this aircraft that were left rather unattended.
Okay.
So we had like 6 or 7, right? You're supposed to do that. Children badly misbehaving, making noise, jumping everywhere. But the other thing was, like, they were having the time of their life. They were having fun. And they're trapped in this tube for 6 hours. I'm just trying to get some sleep. And even if you throw the earbuds in and turn it all the way up, you still hear these little...
Is it a what?
Nothing. You still hear these little rugrats, like, making noise. I swear one of them soiled themselves, so the plane is, like, suddenly it's reeking. And I look back, and their parents are, like, watching a movie on their iPad. So I didn't say anything to the kids. What I wanted to do was walk up to the parents and be like, look, we're all in this together, okay?
Yeah.
But your kids are really harsh on my mellow, so let's get up. Let's pause the movie. We can watch the movie when we're in flight, and let's just corral the group, huh?
Yeah.
Didn't do that.
But you wanted to.
Oh, wanted to. I wanted. Thank you, Dan. I wanted to say something to the kids, but again, I have a pretty hard and fast rule. You do not scold other people's children unless they're putting other people in danger.
I had to scold a kid at a park like a year ago because he was probably like 10 or 11, and my 4-year-old was on the slide, and he was trying to kick her off the slide, like with the bottom of his foot, like Sparta kick her off the slide. And so I had to scold that child. But if it's like they're just being annoying, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, that's dangerous behavior. And when you see your kid, especially when they're 4, be like physically accosted, it doesn't matter if it's another kid. You see red. And so, I would encourage the community to not act on these emotions, but it's hard to act rational when you see your child in a perilous situation.
Yeah. We're glad to have you back. I'm glad you made it back.
Good to be back.
And I guess I'll ask you this. Is Utah football the 9th best team of the last 50 years in college football that has not won a national championship?
I heard you talking about this coming in, and I'll have to look at the athletic list. It feels about right without knowing exactly what the list looks like. Who's number 1?
Oregon.
Yeah. Do you have the list in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, read me the 8 teams ahead of Utah.
Okay, so it goes Oregon. Again, it goes back 50 years.
Yeah.
Oregon, Texas A&M, Virginia Tech, TCU, UCLA, Wisconsin, Iowa, West Virginia, Utah.
So it's a really interesting exercise. Is this Vanini? Did Vanini do this?
No, this was... Let me scroll back to Antonio Morales.
Okay. It's a really interesting exercise. And without having data in front of me, I feel like I could probably make a case that Utah should be ranked ahead of a few of those teams. TCU stands out.
Really,
West Virginia, certainly.
The timeline is what skews it because UCLA hasn't won anything since 1998.
Yeah.
But you go back 50 years, and like the late 70s, 80s, early 90s were very good to UCLA.
Yeah.
Wisconsin kind of reached their peak about 2000 and hasn't done a whole ton since. So there's a pretty heavy recency bias. Oregon has done a lot in those 30 years or so.
Yeah.
Before that, they were no good.
Yeah.
So the timeline is what makes it pretty interesting.
Yeah, like if this was the past 25 years, right? Like since 2001 or whatever, maybe Utah's higher on that list. But yeah, to your point, you go back, there were some lean years, man. Lean years before Coach Mack kind of started to get things going in the right direction, and even Coach Mack struggled for a minute. So, yeah, if you go back 50, I think that makes it different.
I actually take umbrage with Iowa being where they are because in 50 years they've won 5 conference championships. They've made no national championship game appearances. They've never been in the top 5. They've only won 5 conference championships in 50 years, but they're always in the top 25.
Yeah.
So they got a grip of points in this system for that.
Yeah, it seems like Iowa football every year is like the same deal, where they're not going to be fun to watch. It's going to be like 10-7 week in and week out, 13-10 wins, but they're still going to win 8 games and go to some like respectable bowl, but never anything beyond that. But more often than not much beneath that, right? It feels like you can kind of count on them to be that every single year.
Interestingly enough, also, maybe you heard this, 8 of the 12 eligible teams in the Big 12 are on this list in the top 20.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of what we already knew. It's a bunch of like quality, respectable, hey, you're all 7.5 for an 8.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of encapsulates what the Big 12 is. So did you say Troy Smith was the last Buckeye to win the Heisman?
Yeah.
When did Maurice Claret win the Heisman? Was he before Troy Smith?
Maurice Claret did not win the Heisman.
He did not win the Heisman. For some reason, that was the first name that popped in my head. For some reason, I thought he won the Heisman. I was wrong.
He was really good.
He was really good.
Fun to watch.
Yes, sir.
Stay tuned for The Drive. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.